So I'm delighted to be joined by Vincent Eavis at PayTech and Joey Rault from Codat. And we're here to talk about ways to accelerate the shift in B2B payments to more modern payment methods like commercial card. Commercial cards and virtual cards have already been widely available for a number of years and can be seen as a win-win for banks and their commercial customers. For customers, they're a more efficient and secure payment method that provides an easy access to a credit line. And for issuers, cards offer an attractive margin and leave them less vulnerable to fraud. Yet, in the US, 71% of mid-market businesses are still clinging to their checkbooks. So we're going to dig into some of the barriers to scaling commercial card programs and in particular look at how banks can identify card-receptive spend in the middle market segment or the unmanaged book. But first, let's do some introductions. So Vincent, could you please introduce yourself and PayTech?
Yeah, hi, I'm Vince. I'm the co-founder of the OPTIMA tool by PayTech. I have a background once upon a time in behavioral economics and then having worked on the supplier side and then worked for a bank in the cash management, treasury and trade solutions area. And what we try to do at PayTech is one of our phrases is finding the signal in the noise. So when we look at data, signals are resonant card opportunities that mean something to the buyer and the supplier.
That's awesome.
And hey, Joey Rault, CRO here at Codat. Codat is a fintech platform that sits between banks and small businesses and makes it easy for small businesses to share data with those banks. And by sharing that data, the small businesses are able to gather insights from the banks around how to access capital and better use that data for payments and other financial services.
So let's get into it. And look at the middle market in particular. So the middle market offers a significant potential for B2B commercial cards, yet only 3% of the companies in North America use them as their primary working capital solution. So Vince, can you tell us a bit more about the specific challenges that make it hard for banks to scale their commercial card programs to mid-market companies versus in their larger corporate segment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my experience much of my life was selling different payment products to large companies. And if you think there aren't that many large companies and there are lots of resources, lots of banks that are providing lots of different people in the organization to pay attention to that customer. But the further down you go into sort of mid-market and small businesses, that requires an enormous amount of staff to really understand and have time. I mean, if a bank relationship manager has 350 customers, they can only see one a day kind of thing, and that's it. So there is a resource constraint, number one. The second constraint is understanding the real pain points of those organizations, because with respect to the bank people, what they're trying to do and help provide finance, all these sorts of things, but they probably have never worked in accounts payable or never worked in procurement or sourcing or treasury or finance. And secondly, they probably never really understand what it's like to be in and run a mid-market business and understand what happens if those invoices don't get paid. What's the consequences going to be for the people who work at that organization? So I think generally it's a resource constraint, and secondly, a constraint by really understanding the individual problems of all of those thousands of entities.
And what about from your perspective, Joey? What are you seeing?
Yeah, 100%. I'd echo Vincent's points there, and I'd boil it down to visibility. I think that there's visibility into understanding the roles and the specific mid-market business in of itself, and visibility into the data that's unique to that small business, in visibility into the specific payments, the specific invoices, that makes it difficult to provide a customized or a personalized set of recommendations versus a broad set of services.
And between the two businesses, Codat and PayTech, you've analysed a lot of spend files. What insights have you gained, and maybe this one to Joey, about the businesses and issuers' portfolios? Are there any particular data points that highlight the scale of the opportunity for banks?
Yeah, I think just to talk about the opportunity for a second, we, in serving the mid-market, emerging mid-market, larger mid-market, we're seeing spend files anywhere from a couple $1 million up to $1 billion in spend. So, and everywhere in between. And across the board, we're seeing, pretty consistently average of 20 to 30% payments still being on check. Now, we know check is a slowly disappearing act, but at the same time, it's still there, and especially in the mid-market. So just in terms of, immediate opportunity, We're looking at very large spend files for these mid-market companies and very large opportunities within the check space.
Maybe just staying with you for a moment, Joey, in the sea of opportunity that is the full unmanaged book, how can banks, what tactics are available? What strategies should banks use to identify and pinpoint the customers that are most likely to have to convert to active card users?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think going back to the challenges, the first thing that banks say is, well, how can I even make this economically feasible? So I think the first thing to realize is that with our combined solution, we are bringing to market a very efficient, more affordable, automated way to connect to your customers, to pull the customer's information out, to essentially run that full health check, to run an MRI on any and all of your unmanaged business. So I think before even answering what are the opportunities, just saying, is it even feasible for me as a bank to work with this size of client in a world where previously it wasn't in my purview? Now with these tools, there is the option, there is the availability to do that. I think the other thing that Vincent's done such an incredible job of partnering with us on, and really as we go to market with mutual customers, is it's not about making, in our sense, broad, full shifts and moving every payment to a virtual card or looking at how I can radically transform all of my payment stack. It's really saying, what are the 2, 3, or 4 things that I can do as a mid-market business or as a larger business or emerging market business that can actually make have the biggest impact on my business versus the plethora of things that I might do. And so it's really about the consolidation of those opportunities to the most impactful versus a massive transformation objective.
Clearly, data plays a critical role in identifying potential opportunities. What type of data and metrics, Vincent, should banks prioritize when analyzing their unmanaged portfolio to assess that potential?
Yeah, so I mean, the analogy that we've kind of got here of a patient in pain is a good one, because you need to think about the whole body of the patient. I mean, it would be no good just to take a fingernail or just do a blood test or just do a scan. You need to sort of get information that's going to give you the full picture of that organization. So you need a complete file, for example. You need to see the whole thing. And there may be relevant or irrelevant spend opportunities, but allow us to be the experts because we have the sample size of thousands of customers to look at. And when it comes to the type of data points, they can relate to sort of 3 pain point areas. One is sort of financial, engineering, spend, that kind of thing. The second thing is process automation, where most of the transactions are. And the third area is where most of the suppliers are, that are one-off type of transactions. And so different data, whether that's pertaining to obviously the supplier's name and address, good information on that front, but also numbers and values of invoices, numbers and values of payments, those payment terms, payment methods. Yeah. We can understand the shift if you move from this payment type to this one. What's the propensity? And the more data points we generally have, the more we can rule in or rule out opportunities. So there's almost no data that is not good data. And we try to, that's really our mantra, is to get a picture of the whole body, and then we can scan it properly to find both the pain that the patient is aware of, what we call blatant pain, and the pain they're not aware of, that's festering, the latent pain.
So we can't go anywhere at the moment without hearing about AI, but fundamentally, AI and similar technologies are only as good as the data that backs them up, and it builds that foundation. So Joey, maybe you can speak about some of the challenges to actually getting that high quality data and how you see your solution playing into that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're big believers in AI here at Codat, and we are big believers in providing intelligence to bankers, relationship managers, and anyone who serves small businesses. Our mission is to make life easier for small businesses, and the way we do that is we empower those who serve small businesses with data. Our technology works in that we connect seamlessly and directly right into the small business ecosystem, their accounting, their ERP, their commerce systems, and we pull the data directly out of that. The small business owner, the mid-market accountant, it's 3 clicks and a login. We're talking 45, 75 seconds max to actually connect and provide their data. It's a very low lift, and we're trying to make it the easy button so that they can easily share that data and then get access to some of those more advanced services. And then on top of that, because we're directly connected, it's also a perpetual connection. And that feeds a rich ongoing data set, or health check, as we talk about, where that data is constantly flowing into our analytics pool in partnership with PayTech.
Yeah, and if I could take that sort of baton off you, having got that data coming through, it's then what happens with that history of data we can then look at to understand experiences as to why it makes sense for a supplier. A supplier might issue 100 invoices in a year, and they're all different to different buyers with different values and different terms. And so data lake is sometimes not as sexy as AI and all these sorts of things, but it's a massively important thing to practice machine learning and things on. And so that's what we have. We have about 7 million B2B, G2B, government to business suppliers as well, that we can look at all the different ways of these hundreds of millions of transactions we've seen, lots of different buyers of different shapes and sizes. And therefore, when we profile, when we get a buyer, that great data coming through, we can look at which other buyers have had similar relationships with those sorts of suppliers. What might work well for this one? And that's really what we're trying to use all of that data and all the funky stuff for. And then once we got that, then of course that's going to inform the kind of some of the things we've also spoken about in terms of generative AI scripts, or avatar-based videos to help the buyer provide this resource. And a lot of that's drawing on this data lake and a key concept.
So with any new technology, there's got to be a clear business case and ROI for the person investing in that new technology. So putting yourselves in the shoes of a bank, how should they present the business case to their customers of sharing that data?
So there's probably a couple of parts to this, but I think I would start with thinking about the business case if the end customer of the bank.
Yeah.
Because if we're there to serve the customer, that's a great place to start. And therefore, we think about trying to simplify that business case with a simple business case output that the customer sort of says, this is my cost of capital, this is my cost to process an invoice, this is my cost to make a payment, those sorts of things. With a few little key inputs, we can then look at the opportunities and provide the business case that's relevant to the targeted supplier spend transactions that we've got. And just giving the customer that is a great way. Imagine you've now got 5,000 customers and you've got the accumulative business case of all of those, and you know all the suppliers that make it. That's great information for the bank to now say, we are now aware of which suppliers will drive the business case of the customers that we're providing credit to and serving. So I think that's the first part. And then I suppose there's also the part of the business case for the bank.
Absolutely. And I think for the bank, it's really thinking about your sales funnel, and that sales funnel leading to more volume on card, and more volume on card leading to more interchange. So with our combined solution, you're doing two things. You are increasing the top of the sales funnel. So you're putting more into your sales funnel, and you're dramatically increasing the quality of that funnel as well, because you're looking at the comprehensive spend file for each business. So as everyone in sales knows, when you increase the quantity and the quality of your funnel, you generally increase the end sales that are coming through. And so that's generally what we're seeing with the banks that we're working with. It's an increase fundamentally of payment volume on card.
So hot off the press, PayTech and Codat have just announced a new partnership which brings a joint solution to market for issuing banks to collect and analyze spend files. So Vincent, maybe you could talk a little bit about the specific capabilities that the PayTech and Codat have as part of this joint solution, and how do you complement each other in that overall offering?
Yeah, the simple way of the complement is that we're, Codat is providing the syringe and getting the health data out of thousands of customers for banks. And we then take that data and we can quickly diagnose the best ways to pay those suppliers for those buyers based upon the bank's payment products. And really what we're able to do is help them manage what is otherwise just left unmanaged, and to grow that portfolio by spend, but also to provide value to their customers by actually helping them with meaningful things. And I think that's also the really interesting future part that we'll be doing together, is being able to be more consultative with some of the data that can go back to the bank. So yeah, we've solved some of those payment problems, but what other things are we seeing in the data. So that's part of the future. But initially, it's going to be that quick diagnosis on scale.
Absolutely. Two words that come to mind, which almost seem contradictory: automation and personalization. So automation meaning, how do I automate that data collection, insights, proactive advice that I might want to provide? Personalization, how do I personalize what my advice or payment solutions I might be providing to that end customer? So the automation makes it feasible for the bank to economically serve. The personalization makes it a great experience, both for the banker and for their client.
So, Joey, maybe you can talk us through how issuers actually are starting to already solve for their unmanaged book by combining Codat and PayTech.
Yeah, absolutely. Together, we're working with some of the largest banks and issuers in the world. And what we're starting to see is banks connect to their customers. I think fundamentally, that's the biggest shift that we can offer in the market is connecting your customer's ERP to the bank so that you're getting and pulling the real-time data, the comprehensive data on their payments and the associated spend file. So we're pulling that information, we're providing it to PayTech and OPTIMA, and they're provided the analytics and insights on how to take action on that data. So Vince can talk a little bit more around what we're doing with some live customers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things is that we're finding that banks are sort of having a discussion which they haven't quite had before, because for obvious reasons that they weren't managing. And they're asking, well, how many suppliers would a company of this size have? And how many might we look to be having on a card program? And interestingly, one of the banks that we're working with now, we know one of their sales relationship account managers who's now been specifically put into this area to manage it. And that's really good, because it's going to be a kind of mega manager who's managing actually the data, working with us to get to thousands of customers, whereas before she was only working with like 20 customers. And so that's quite a powerful message that's kind of reverberating through the bank, is redeployment of a resource to an area where there's much, much more spend potential for this individual person than maybe in the role they were before. And it's that dialogue now with the bank, with Codat ourselves together, to say what data were they getting before from their customers, and now what are we looking at to meaningfully drive that base?
And what would you say is just the general percentage difference of data? So if I'm a bank and I'm traditionally looking at my unmanaged business, and I'm sending them a request to share information, historically, what have you seen? Like what percentage of data are they getting? And now what percentage of data are they getting with the combined solution?
Okay. I mean, this very much sort of relates to some stuff we've looked at in the past, very interestingly, which is banks have not been very good at getting data, because they haven't really got anything to show the customer. It's just give me some data and then you can spend on my product. Right. And so people are a little bit skeptical of that. I mean, there might still be a benefit, but instead, if you show someone a tool as well and they can see that, oh, that's what I could do, or here's my business case, and now I'll give you my data. Two things happen. Number one, you get higher levels of data. And to give you some numbers, so the typical response rate we see from banks, they just ask customers, can we have a file? About 5% or less.
5%
or less. And that's where you're actually speaking to the customer, not if you're sending out an email going to thousands and thousands. If you then show them something, you can get to 50, 60, 70% with the customers. And the quality of the data is much better. Another important thing is, and an interesting dialogue with the bank is, should there be a template? Which probably should be, to make it a little bit easier. But at the same time, if the customer's got other data points that you can get, that Codat can get through their accounting platform, then, let's see if we can use it.
Joey, we're going to wrap up with the hardest question of today.
Oh boy.
And that is, if you could summarize the partnership in one sentence, what would it be?
Yeah, I would go back to what I said earlier around the contradictory concepts of automation and personalization. So automation, how do you make a group of customers who is generally seen as uneconomical to serve and to work with? How do you automate that service so that you can work with them? And not only that, but can you go the step further and personalize that service just the same way you would a large corporate? And that's where you can really create disruption.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us.